Great. Okay, so we're recording. All right. Welcome to OutRight TV, a video and podcast series bringing you stories of LGBTIQ people and allies across the globe. I'm Sahar Mozami, OutRight's UN Program Officer, and for today's episode, I'm talking to Liza from the organization Immigration Equality. Welcome, Liza.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be talking to you.
Oh, you too. I'm excited. This is good. You know, generally, I'm pretty excited to be interviewing you for the first of hopefully many OutRight TV features on immigration equality. I've actually had the pleasure of volunteering with Immigration Equality. I had a case that closed out late last year in the summer, and it was such a pleasure to be able to work with such a great organization and learn more on my end about the work that you all are doing. But for our viewers that might not be so familiar, can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit more information about the organization?
Of course. So my name is Liza Dubasarskaya. It's a complicated last name, but I've been working with immigration equality since last August. My job focuses on working with asylum seekers in detention, but we also work with obviously LGBTQ and HIV positive asylum seekers who are not detained. And, you know, that's what we do primarily is to help LGBTQ and HIV positive people get asylum, and so they wouldn't have to go back to the countries where they experience severe persecution.
Mm-hmm. Such important work. I think everyone can agree who's watching that how important it is. And you were talking about specifically immigration detention centers, and I think generally we know that detention centers are not a nice place for anyone, but can you say a bit more about the particular dangers facing LGBTIQ people in detention centers?
Of course. Unfortunately, LGBTQ and HIV positive people in detention do experience a lot of harassment and homophobia. That can include verbal harassment. I've seen instances of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, and which is very unfortunate because those are the folks that are fleeing from their home countries because they often experience that type of persecution, in the countries where they lived before, and then they come here to ask for asylum, and they're placed in immigration detention where they experience the same trauma and the same kind of treatment they experienced in the past. For example, I worked with one transgender woman who was placed in maximum security in a detention center because the detention staff refused to house her with women. And so she was placed in maximum security with men. And she experienced 2 incidents of severe sexual harassment there. Additionally, her confinement conditions were very similar to solitary confinement. She only could leave her cell 1 hour a day. For the rest of the time, she was locked in within 4 walls. She was having, severe and mental problems because of that. She was feeling depressed. She was crying. All she wanted to do was get out. And it's not a first case I've seen like that. I've talked to a different transgender woman in a different detention center who was also experienced sexual assault and was placed in solitary confinement, for her own quote-unquote protection, which once again just kind of exacerbated her mental suffering. She also reported to me that she's been crying every day, and it's just very difficult to be in that kind of situation.
Of course, that's horrifying. And like you said, people are immigrating to the United States to escape persecution, and then are found in these situations or put into these situations that just exacerbate the harms that they've already faced and the trauma that they've already experienced. So it's absolutely horrifying. And I know that I've heard that Immigration Equality, particularly at this moment, has been advocating for the release of all HIV positive people in ICE detention. Can you talk a bit more about what you're seeing among your clients and why the situation is so dangerous for them right now, and where this campaign has come from?
Exactly. Like you said, we have been also in touch with several HIV positive people in detention, and what we've discovered is that the detention conditions are absolutely not, not appropriate for HIV positive people in general, but now giving the, COVID pandemic, it's even more dangerous than before. So for instance, CDC recommends that HIV positive people take special precautions to avoid being infected with COVID-19 because they are at higher risk of COVID-19 complications, and the detention is not appropriate place where you can protect yourself from COVID-19. So for example, I talk to people who are sometimes housed in kind of housing units containing between 70 to 100 people. They only have maybe 5 toilets to share between those 70 to 100 people, like maybe 5 showers on average. One woman who is in detention right now, I've been talking to, she said they do not have enough soap, like there would be soap, but then it runs out, and then you have to wait for detention officials to refill it. She said they at some point ran out of toilet paper and had to wait for refill. Another person I talked to said at one point there was not any cleaning supplies because they get a caddy with a disinfectant to wash the floors. And at one point there was just a shampoo bottle, kind of shampoo mixture people receive in detention in that caddy instead of a disinfectant. Immigration or detention officials are not oftentimes wearing masks, although everyone should be wearing masks, but that has not been happening. So there's just a lot of reports that kind of point to this callous disregard on behalf of detention officials for people's well-being. And of course, given that, detention is a closed environment where, you cannot maintain 6 feet apart, you cannot always wash your hands, you cannot be taking all those precautions that, we are taking out here. It creates the environment where it's very easy for somebody to become infected with COVID-19, and for HIV positive people and other medically vulnerable people, it's extremely dangerous right now.
Mm-hmm. So it seems the way that you frame it or describe it, it seems like the conditions to begin with are terrible, but now have become exponentially so because of the COVID pandemic and also just not being prepared for something like this.
Exactly, yes. Based on everything we've seen and everything we've heard, ICE is unprepared to deal with this scale of a pandemic. Even when people become sick, ICE doesn't necessarily have the medical kind of setup in place to help them. There might not be enough medical staff or enough rooms or to house sick people. It's right. So it's a disaster waiting to happen, and it's already been starting to unravel now.
Of course, that's terrible. And you said, a lot of your work is around particularly asylum claims. Are asylum claims still being considered now in this world amidst COVID-19? How has your work in getting people out of detention been affected? The asylum claims, are they still moving forward? Is immigration equality able to continue this important work, and how now?
Thank you for asking. Yes, so for non-detained cases, the hearings are being suspended and put on hold. In detention, hearings are moving forward, and detention immigration hearings in general move very quickly. So that has not changed, and we still have to be responding to this kind of pace to be able to help people. So before COVID-19, I have been giving people pro se advice and helping them prepare for their immigration cases once they see immigration judge. So that has not changed, and I am still doing that, and is intense because on top of that now we're also now responding to the COVID-19 crisis. And we always have made the effort to get people released from detention on parole, but now it's even more urgent, and so we're trying to push faster and harder to get people out of detention because their life and health is in serious danger. So to answer your question, basically everything is just identified, and there is more to do than ever before.
Yeah, of course. Oh wow. I mean, I feel like, I think right now this is a daunting time for many of us, but particularly for people who are in this immigration limbo in the system, right? But hoping to like see a bit of hope in that darkness. Are there any inspiring success stories that you can share with us today? Anything in the midst of this that has been that's helped keep you going?
Yes, there have been a couple. So we worked with 4 HIV positive clients. 2 of them were detained at Richwood Correctional Facility in Louisiana, 1 at Wynn Detention Center in Louisiana, and 1 at La Palma Detention Center in Texas. They all experienced pretty bad medical care when it came to HIV. One of those people have not received his HIV medication in detention for a month. Others had the HIV treatment interrupted for a couple of days. None of those people were receiving the HIV medication at consistent time. All of it can have serious consequences on how your body responds to the HIV treatment. Things like that can also cause HIV treatment to fail. So several of our clients started experiencing kidney issues that they did not have before prior to being detained. And they found blood in their urine, they were in pain. Those types of problems, can be linked to inadequate HIV care. Mm. So luckily, we filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties to bring to the attention of the people in charge and the public what has been happening. And the 4 clients who were HIV positive and detained in all those detention centers were released. So that's definitely a bit of good news and something that gave all of us hope and just motivation to keep fighting and to know that it is possible to achieve results.
Absolutely. I mean, those are amazing stories. I'm so happy to hear that. And such, I think such a great story of that effective, campaigning and work for such a positive result, and exactly what we were hoping for in a situation like this, and also the logical situation, like the thing that should have happened in a situation like that. So happy to hear that, those things are actually happening. Liza, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today for OutRight TV, a podcast and video series which brings to life stories of LGBTIQ people and allies from across the globe. My colleagues and I will be back soon with more stories. So thank you again, Liza.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing more stories from you guys. I think what you do is really important.
Awesome. You too. And keep up the great work.
Will do. Thank you. Okay.